Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jed Lee, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are an iHeartRadio Best Kids and Family Podcast Award nominee. We are so happy they're a part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family. Please be sure to connect with us on Facebook at facebook.com/readingwithyourkids. We have a wonderful guest for you today. Her name is Lory Linn, and she is here to tell us about her wonderful new book, The Big Scary Monster. You know, I'm really excited to have Lory come in because I remember how much my kids loved hearing scary, well, not really scary, but they loved thinking that they loved hearing really scary monster stories. Well, my kids loved hearing stories, and I love telling stories. And, you know, it's just one of those gifts that I've been blessed with. But there are a lot of people who haven't been blessed with the gift of being a natural storyteller. And if that is you, well, don't worry about a thing, because I have a way for you to become a storytelling superhero. That's right. I know a way that you can become the parent or caregiver who is always ready to tell the perfect story at any time. Curious? I bet you are. All you need to do is to download the Storied app. That's right, the Storied app. This is a fantastic tool that will give you instant access to lots of original stories created by some of children's top storytellers from all over the globe. Maybe you're looking to help your child become more mindful. Well, the Story app has lots of stories about mindfulness, like Rabbit's magical flashlight. Or maybe you would like to tell a story that teaches your kid to be kinder. Well, you'll want to check out Zuli and Friends on the Storied app. The Storied app features content from all over the world that helps kids develop a respect for other cultures and perspectives. And the stories have all been developed with input from top children's developmental experts. And there is new content added all the time. Check it out today. Go to their website, trystoried.com. That's trystoried.com. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by Megan Meehan's 8-week online children's writing class. You know, the class is just about to start. You definitely want to be part of this class if you have ever dreamed about being a children's author. Megan is a published novelist, poet, producer, playwright, and screenwriter. You may have heard her recently on the podcast celebrating her brand new children's book, Abila's Adventure, a delightful tale of a Brazilian parrot who moves to New York City. Here's why you want to be a part of the class. Everything happens online. You learn at your own pace and on your own schedule. Each student can expect to complete a short story in the kid-lit genre. And all stories, check this out, listen, all stories will be professionally illustrated and published on Smart Kids Club. For more information, please email Megan directly at meehanms@aol.com. That's meehamms@aol.com. You can also call or text her at 845-538-0516. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by The Crabapple Tree by Tom O'Toole. And just don't let anybody know this, but in a few weeks we're going to announce that The Crabapple Tree by Tom O'Toole is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read. We love this book. It is a really, really powerful book. Tom wrote The Crabapple Tree to teach kids how to accept and love the differences in all of us, especially when we feel we're the ones who are different. The Crabapple Tree is all about bravery, courage, and standing up for yourself. It's about the athletic girl who is told, you're not pretty enough, or the sensitive boy who is told, real men don't cry. And it's about the author, a gay boy who grew up convinced that something was terribly wrong with him. It's the story of hope deferred and renewed belief in the fulfillment of longing. It is a story that elevates the marginalized and calls forth the ostracized. It is a story about the greatest voice speaking into the hopeless heart, saying, I see you. I made you. I love you. I want you. The Crabapple Tree is available on Amazon. It is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read. The Crabapple Tree by Tom O'Toole. joining us right now from Myrtle Beach in South Carolina, one of the most beautiful places in the world. She is the author of The Big Scary Monster. Please welcome to the show, Lory Linn. Lory, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am wonderful, and I'm so confused. I'm through the magic of the internet and technology. I am looking at you. You're in your office, and I see cute little fuzzy dolls, and I see lovely pictures, and I see a smiling woman, but I don't see any big scary monsters. Tell us about the book, please.
Well, The Big Scary Monster, it's actually the first book of a series, The Adventures of Little Kora Jane. And The Big Scary Monster is the first one. The second one is Ant Trouble. It's going to be out the end of July, hopefully. That's our plan. The Big Scary Monster, well, first I should probably tell you about Little Kora Jane. The book is based off of my granddaughter. My granddaughter is 2, but the little girl in the book is 5. And she's she's a tomboy. She lives in South Carolina. She wears big bows in her hair. She loves to get dirty. And she has a stuffed cat named Meow. And Meow comes to life when the grown-ups aren't around. And they're always teaching each other valuable lessons. So in The Big Scary Monster, she gets a new bed, a big bed. And she wants to sleep in the bed, but she's afraid that the big scary monster will show up again, just like it does every single night. And she doesn't tell her mommy that she's afraid to sleep in the bed, so she gets in the bed and then she talks to Meow. Of course, he comes to life once mommy leaves the room. And you go through the book and they talk about different things, and he gets out of bed and looks out the window and he explains to her what the big scary monster is. And of course, it's not really a monster because everyone knows that there's no such thing as monsters. But it's a good lesson. It's a good book for your children who might be afraid to sleep. Maybe they're afraid of the dark. You know, you're always looking for monsters under the bed, things like that. So it's a great book to read to your children. And the pictures are very colorful. They're very bold. They're very crisp. And so it'll hold the interest of any child, really. Even if they can't read, they'll enjoy the pictures.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I loved about reading with my kids was, of course, I loved reading and I loved putting on the voices. And if you didn't notice, I like to be a little animated. But there were also times when it was just as much fun to kind of skim through the book and to look at the pictures and talk about what we see in the pictures.
Yes, and I made it a point to, of course, I don't do the illustrations. I'm not quite that talented, but I do have a wonderful illustrator. And, of course, together we worked on this. And my big thing is that's what I like to do. I go around and read to the kids in the daycare and in the preschools and different places like that. And I always pick something out of the book and we talk about it, especially for the children who are kind of small and don't always understand everything. And on every page, there's something that you can talk about. Like, at the beginning, her mom shows her the bed and she looks around the room and she sees everything that she recognizes except she can't find Meow. Well, you have to look real close at the picture and you see Meow hiding behind the pillow, but it's something that we can use as interaction with the children. And always, I always ask, do you see Meow? And I get all the kids' interest then. They're all looking at the book. They get real close. And, of course, 15 children shouting out at once, he's over there. But, that makes it interesting. And every picture, every page in the book has something like that so that you can have the children follow along and you'll hold their interest.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. You're talking about, kids being afraid of big scary monsters, and there aren't really any monsters, thank goodness. But I'm here in the studio, and Augie the Wonder Dog is asleep on the couch. I mean, diligently watching over me, making sure that I'm safe. But he's a dog that came from a shelter, and to be honest with you, he sees monsters everywhere. He hears a noise and he's barking, and he's a dog that's just. Thankfully we've helped him along and he's comfortable with us. But when he came to us, he was afraid of everything. And for a lot of kids, that's, they just see everything and they're fearful of so many different things. How do you think we can use books to help kids kind of be less fearful of the world?
Well, one of the most important things I feel, I like having an actual physical book for starters. Mm-hmm. And I read, my granddaughter, as I said, she's 2, and I've been reading with her since she was tiny, since before she was, able to even recognize color. But I think that that's important, mm-hmm. to sit down with the children, to read with the children, again, to interact with them, look at the pictures, talk about the pictures. I think, too, that it's a good way to get them, if they're afraid of something, they might, like little Kora Jane in the book, she doesn't tell her mommy that she's afraid of the big scary monster. Mm-hmm. A lot of kids are afraid to admit things, and maybe through the books, that as an adult, we can get the children to talk to us, mm-hmm. and we can explain things to them and help them to not be afraid of things.
Yeah, that's one of the things we've talked about a lot here on the podcast, and I like kind of going over similar topics or talking about the same topic with other guests for a number of reasons. Number one, we always have new listeners coming in, and this might be the very first episode that they have listened to, but also different authors have different perspectives on the same kind of issue, and one of the things that we've talked about is just how powerful a tool reading can be, and talk about some of these difficult issues, because when we're talking about something that's going on in a book, we're not talking about the kid themselves. And so if the kid is, for example, if the kid's being bullied in school and is a little nervous about coming out and saying something about what's happening to him or her at school, well, maybe if we're talking about a character that's being bullied, that's a safer way for that child to start addressing the issue.
I agree. And I think that a child, well, we kind of all know how we are as adults even. You do better with your peers. Mm-hmm. And a child can do better with another child, talking to that child. And in a book, I feel like if a 3-year-old is reading a book and the character is, say, 5 years old, that's someone who she or he can look up to, mm-hmm. and, say, oh, well, little Kora Jane, it maybe isn't so bad after all, because little Kora Jane conquered it, so can I. Mm-hmm. And again, because that character, that's why it's so important to make sure that the characters are so positive, mm-hmm. Because the child is going to, maybe fall in love with that character. So you want the character to be a positive character. Mm-hmm.
Now, I know that your granddaughter inspired the character, but what inspired you to start writing at this point in your life?
Well, I actually started writing when I was young. I always tell people that I've been writing since I was old enough to hold a pencil. I always had a passion for writing. And when I was in school, I always tell people that I was one of those weird people that would, if you couldn't find me, you'd look for me in a library, because, back then we still had the libraries with the encyclopedias and things like that. And I was always researching. It just was interesting to me to research and see what I could write about. And when I was supposed to be studying in a class, I had a notebook and I was writing a story. I was always doing that. But I grew up, went through adult, had babies, all that. I had to adult, as they would say. Mm-hmm. And of course, I had to have my other careers. And even while I did that, I still wrote and I did things. And then once my children grew up, because I ended up having to, work real hard. I was raising my children for a while on my own, so I worked real hard. And then once I got them finished, they graduated school, went off and did their thing. Then I was able to actually sit down and really, really put it to work. Mm-hmm. And so I already knew I was going to write. I never really knew that I was going to write children's books, though. So it's just funny how things happen sometimes.
Yeah. So what's that like for you, a lifelong writer who's been writing, and I'm sure you might have shared some of the stories with a friend or two, But what's it feel like now that you're a writer and that your book has been published, and knowing that families are sitting down and reading The Big Scary Monster and enjoying your writing?
Oh, it gives me great pleasure. First of all, just accomplishing the fact that I actually got a book published, that to me was a great accomplishment in itself. But there's nothing that brightens my day more than to see a child. They'll send me pictures through, Facebook or my email or even on my website. And the pictures I see of the child holding the book and smiling. I mean, there's nothing better than that. And no matter where I go, if I see a child holding a book, that's just great for me anyway. But knowing that they're sharing my book and that they're talking about it, and I have people that are, asking when's the next book coming out. And so, yeah, that's great. I accomplished much more than I ever thought I would.
Mm-hmm. That's really wonderful. Now, I'm wondering, does Kora Jane understand that she is the star of your book series?
No, she doesn't really understand it. She's always been somewhat of a little Miss Photogenic anyway. She has always worn a big bow in her hair, even in the hospital when she was born. So she's always been very photogenic. I will say she loves the book. She doesn't understand yet, although now that she's recognizing herself in pictures, her picture, of course, is on the back of the book. Mm-hmm. Now she'll look at it and she'll say her name. She sees the picture, recognizes it, but she'll sit. I have a book nook for her, and of course there's a lot of books in there for her, and I'll tell her to get a book, and of course she always goes to that one, and it's not because I tell her to. She loves the pictures, and she sits and she looks, and now I'm explaining to her that's Kora, and that's Meow, and she recognizes Meow because that is really her. She really does have a stuffed animal. Mm-hmm. She really does have a stuffed Meow. And the inspiration behind that was when she was in the car seat. She's had that Meow with her for a long time, but when she started, kind of putting some words together, she still doesn't speak clearly. But she sat in the back seat of the car and had a long conversation with him one day. And that was my next inspiration to adding that character in the book.
That's awesome. That is awesome. And, I'm gonna give parents a little advice. That story you're telling of Kora having the conversation with Meow in the back of the car as you're driving her around. When the kids get to high school, never hesitate to volunteer to take the kids this way or that way, because pretty soon they're in the back seat and they forget that you're up front and that you can hear them, and so you're able to listen in and hear everything that's going on at school. And hopefully it's not too frightening for you, but it's really helpful.
Well, let me say that, as I mentioned, I do have 2 adult children now. And as a writer, of course, I've always done this. As a writer, you tend to be a little nosy anyway. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times people will talk to me, and it isn't that I'm ignoring them, but I'm listening to what's going on. So it's true what you just said, because my kids could never get away with anything. Because for some reason I always had that ear, that extra ear extended, and they would get themselves in trouble just because they were talking and I could hear them, and they couldn't understand why could I hear them so well. Well, that's the reason why.
Yeah. Well, this just struck me. I think, I certainly don't have any proof of this, but I think the fact that we spent so much time talking about the books that we read, and that led into talking about the music that we were listening to, or the TV shows or the movies that we watched. We're always talking, and the kids, and I was always listening to the kids, so it was quite natural for the kids to just be open and talk with me or with my wife. And so I think that, when we were in the car and, we spent so much time talking in the car, I think when it came time for me to be the Uber driver and driving the kids to dance practice or football practice, they just get in. It's like, oh yeah, we just talk in the car.
Yeah, we did that too. I think that's important. We had dinner. We had dinner time. Mm-hmm. Every night we sat down at the table. Of course, as they got a little older, it got a little busy, but we at least made sure that we'd sit down and we'd talk. and we always talked. And back then, they didn't really have their cell phones. They did, but it wasn't so high tech like it is now.
Right.
But even now, when we're all together, we try to refrain from, using our phones, and we talk. We've always been very close and open like that. And I think that's very important.
Mm-hmm.
I think that communication with your children is very important. And I think that's another reason why I enjoy writing the children's books, because that's a good way for you to communicate with your kids.
Yeah, it's that must be such a thrill, knowing, having this passion that communication is so important, and knowing that you're creating a resource that's really, it's kind of like your book's kind of like fertilizer, just kind of help that conversation grow in a family.
Yes, and people have asked me how they know that, my granddaughter was my inspiration, but obviously she's only 2 years old, so I'm already, ahead in the future books that are going to be out, and people want to know, how do I get the inspiration for the stories? Because, there's certain things that are in the books that obviously the real little Kora Jane hasn't done yet. Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of it was from my own children.
Right.
And a little secret, the big scary monster was actually something from my own childhood.
Ooh.
But, it's just things like that. And there's just certain things that you keep that you remember in your mind. And as a writer, I feel like my mind never shuts off. It's constantly running and working, and sometimes it's in overtime, and that's not always a good thing.
Well, really happy that's happening, and that you're churning out these great stories and these great books. What advice can you give to somebody else who's been a lifelong writer but has never gotten up the courage or the confidence to try to get their book published or submit it to a publisher? What advice do you have for that person?
Well, people have asked me that question. People have asked me before. They'll say, I've always wanted to write, but I don't know what to write about, or I don't know what to do. Well, I tell people, just write. Mm-hmm. Everyone, you said it earlier, all authors, everyone, no matter what form of art you have, everyone has their own style. And I think that one of the biggest things that stops people from doing it is because people tell them that they can't. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that you should let that stop you. If you know you can or you want to do it, you need to do it. Don't let what others tell you, threaten you. If you have a pen, and we're also our own worst critics. So if you look at it and you say, oh, I'm not real, I don't know what I'm doing, this isn't very good, that doesn't mean that someone else reading it won't think so. Mm-hmm. And I think that you should just go for it. Just do it. Yeah. And you have to overcome the obstacle. First of all, you need to write it, and then submit it. And yeah, you're going to get some people that are going to turn you down, and a lot of people are going to say no, but then there's a lot of people that say yes. And if you let that one person discourage you, it's never going to happen. Yes. So just keep going for it.
Absolutely. And one of the great things now, because of technology, we have access to people that we normally wouldn't have had. There are editors out there that we can find through the internet that can help us make that next step. Because even J.K. Rowling and Stephen King have editors, and people that help them move along. So, absolutely.
Well, I think that's important, and it's okay to ask. It's also very important and a good thing. Never feel like you can't ask for help. Mm-hmm. Like you just said, an editor is one of the best people that can help you. Yeah. And tell you, and just take their advice.
Yeah. And I also like that you said, don't let anybody tell you that you can't do it. Most importantly, don't allow yourself to say that. I'm teaching this week. I'm teaching a magic class, and one of the rules, we have two main rules in the class. Number one is we treat everybody with respect. We treat each other with respect. But the second thing is, and I tell the kids, you cannot say the words, I can't do it, unless you add the word yet to the end of that statement. Understanding that we're all capable of doing something and making our dreams come true.
And you're right. That's true. Yeah. And I like that.
Yeah. Well, I like your book, and I want people to go out and check out your book. You have a great website. Where can folks go to learn more about you and the Big Scary Monster?
Well, the website is littlekorajane.com. You can find us on Facebook, The Adventures of Little Kora Jane. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. That's L Wrights for you. It's the number 4. Just follow us along. The best place, though, would be the website and Facebook, because there's something always going on there. And you'll get to learn a lot more about the book. You'll learn a lot more about Little Kora Jane, about Meow. And the book has recently also come out. It's not just on Amazon paperback and Kindle, but now it's available on Audible also.
Ooh, excellent, excellent. Well, this is exciting. I'm really excited about this. I'm really excited about the Big Scary Monster and having you here on the show. So thank you very much for taking this time to be with us. We've been talking to the author of the Big Scary Monster, Lory Linn. Lory, thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with the Kids podcast. Our guest will be Faith Goldstein. She'll be here to tell us about her beautiful new book, Gorilla's Night Out. Hey, if you're the author of a great children's book, we have a way for you to tell thousands and thousands of people about it. It's being a guest on the podcast. It's fun, it's easy, and it's free. All you need to do is to go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com, click on the contact button, let us know about your great book. We'll let you know the next easy steps. We want to thank the people who made today's show so wonderful. We want to thank our guest, Lory Linn. Be sure to check out the Big Scary Monster. We also want to thank our sponsors. We want to thank the Storied app. The Storied app, it can turn you into a storytelling superhero. We also want to thank Tom O'Toole. Check out his book, The Crabapple Tree. And, of course, if you are dreaming of being the author of a great children's book, be sure to check out Megan Meehan's online children's writing class. It can turn you into a published children's author in just a few weeks. Check it out today. Also want to thank my amazing producer, Fatima Khan. Don't miss her blog. It is on readingwithyourkids.com. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. And, of course, most of all, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.